We do have one remaining program for the Resilient Veteran Program, and it's going to be with Michelle Reinmiller. And I believe that is with the Veterans Administration, correct? So we will be doing that on May 20th. Again, we can find more information on our website. And if you have any questions about that, please just ask in the chat. We can get that information out to you. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ian Tucker. He is the individual who put the program together. So if you've probably seen him in some of the past ones, you're going to see him in the future ones. And he's going to take it from here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Catherine, for doing the introduction and posting the programs into the chat. As she said, we have Tommy Goode. Hopefully I said that correct. Before we started the program, we went over how to say his last name. He's with us today with the Moral Injury Institute in Springfield, Missouri. And so let's get started. So the first question I have with you is, can you just briefly introduce yourself and your organization?
Yeah, thanks, Ian and Catherine, and good to see everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation today, and such a very important contribution the library is making to our community, veterans community, and the organizations that serve veterans. I'm not a veteran. I always need to say that up front. My story has to do with my father, my dad, who was a World War II combat veteran, and I grew up in his family, and a lot of my understanding of trauma and moral injury as it connects to the story of veterans comes from growing up in his home and seeing what he experienced. Another here to Springfield area in mid 2014, and began then to in 2015 develop a project that focused on caring for aging veterans, and began to formulate some of this content that we now use as Moral Injury Institute. I personally never heard the term moral injury until I got way into this conversation and discovered that through, early on, that the military had done a lot of psychological as well as healthcare related research, and the Marines particularly introduced the whole construct of moral injury. And Ian, I'm just right now going to throw out a couple of book titles that I think are kind of my go-tos. And I don't know if you have them in the library or not, but if I didn't have but two books on this, these are the two I would have. One is called Adaptive Disclosure, a new treatment for military trauma, loss, and moral injury. And that was published by Brett Litz and some others through Gulford Press. And it's been out a little while, but it's still very relevant, and it is very readable, and it's a story of the military research that I referenced. The other book is more for people in faith community, and it was actually my first engagement with this topic, and it's titled Soul, S-O-U-L, Repair, Recovering from Moral Injury After War. And its author is Rita Brock and Gabriella Latini, published by Beacon Press. And it is something that was motivated by Rita Brock's experience of estrangement with her military dad as a young adult. So that one's pretty self-revealing and authentic, but she's associated with a faith community organization, and so it's more relevant to that constituency group. And in 2018, then I felt that I wanted to broaden the base of focus, not just on aging veterans and not just on faith community. That's what I'd been doing, to be more available to a larger conversation and not discounting the value of faith conversations, but to realize that not everyone who's experiencing moral injury is a part of a faith community, and so they don't get to be a part of that conversation otherwise. And we organized Moral Injury Institute as a Missouri certified nonprofit, and have continued to collaborate then from that identity since then. And I and a couple of former military guys helped me as co-organizers. So we've always tried to keep the Moral Injury Institute and everything we do around that conversation on moral injury veteran focused. And I think that that's really important, especially for our conversation today, is that what we know at this point, what we're learning, and how other populations begin to identify with moral injury all comes out of a context of what we've understood about moral injury and military related to military service. So the other, I guess, it's very personal for me, Ian. In some way, this is kind of like a personal quest or mission. It's more than just a topic of interest, you know. And I look back, I have some really deep, disturbing memories of my dad's struggle, and I look back on him, and I didn't understand or know what all was happening in his life. And as many people don't who have military folk in their families, you know, the civilian population just don't get it in terms of, I mean, we can be empathetic and sympathetic, but it's different if you've not been in combat or been in harm's way and been obligated to the flag and the Constitution and freedom and those kinds of important values in your life. Nor do most of us ever experience the value that comes from camaraderie, team building, value setting, goal achievement, all those kinds of things that I think the military instill in their personnel as well. So my role now is to look back and say, okay, so I couldn't perhaps, I can't turn the clock back. I can't go back and help my dad with his struggle or resolve those things, but maybe I can help somebody else, you know, and I want to do that. And I want to help families. I want to help our organizations. I want to help the people that serve our veterans. And so that's been my ambition. The other dynamic is that I found it extremely important to distinguish between PTSD and moral injury. Most of the therapeutic models, in fact, the AMA and APA, understand and have applied strategies for PTSD. Moral injury is not yet on that list of injury. So I'm something of an advocate as in my own way to say this is equally as important. In fact, one of our friends and veteran here in town who's helped me present a lot, Dr. Bucky Buckner, who is a medical surgeon deployed, I think, 4 times to the Middle East, says that confusing a diagnosis of PTSD, of moral injury with PTSD is self-harming, if not life-ending. And it's that serious. So, so it's been really a campaign that we've been on to just point that out. If we can't have any other conversation, we want to make that distinction. The other is based on my early engagement. I did some training and certification work with the VA through their rural health and chaplaincy divisions back in 2015, became a part of a training community and really gained some insights and perspectives that I bought into early on. And that is that moral injury is best resolved in the community and in community, or by the community and in community. And so, so a lot of what we've done is follow open doors and opportunities to present content, introductory kind of content to people who are in caregiver roles, whether that's a pastor, a chaplain, a spiritual care person. We've done training for people who work in multidisciplinary teams in hospice and home health, with those who work in hospital contexts of all the way from physicians to nurses to chaplains to counselors to social workers, you know. So trying to cover all those bases, because anyone who is in a caregiver role has may sometime come into personal contact with a veteran who has struggled with moral injury, and maybe they don't know what it is, nor would that caregiver. And the more they know and understand, the better and more capable they are to care and respond, or to help that person, that individual, find appropriate care for them. I think
I do have.
is doing, and
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry about that. I don't mean to cut you off, but I got two more questions for you real quick. Can you define moral injury real quick?
Sure enough.
We're on the same page.
I'm just going to read off my page so that
Okay.
I get it said. There are a couple of definitions that I use. One comes from Syracuse University, their moral injury project. And it goes like this, Ian: moral injury is damage to the soul of the individual. War is one of, but not the only thing that can cause this damage. Abuse, rape, and violence cause the same type of damage. Soul repair or soul wound, or some people call them the hidden wounds, are terms already in use by researchers and institutions in the United States who are exploring moral injury and paths to recovery. And then the one that I identify with and use most ordinarily is that moral injury is distinguished from PTSD, and PTSD is fear-based response, where moral injury is an emotion-based response and is defined by feelings such as guilt, shame, remorse, anger, despair, mistrust, loss of meaning, isolation, and it is connected with other behavioral issues that are persistent and pervasive. And it's often associated with traumatic experience, if not always. And it finally leads to harming behaviors and is almost always associated with veteran suicide. And so part of the early on, motivation I have is that even now we have something like 22 veterans a day who end life in suicide. And that's just an unacceptable kind of thing. So what can we do? What can we do here in our community? So those are the definitions I use.
Awesome. And I think that is still a statistic that is true. I think it is 22 or 21.8 veterans,
Right.
Something close to 22 veterans that commit suicide every day. Okay, so going off of that, what programs do you offer for veterans? And then what success do you see in the people that participate in those programs?
Okay. One thing that we do that we started in January of 2019 is what we call Guitars for Veterans group for veterans with that experience moral injury and PTSD. And I do that in collaboration with the VA Vet Center here in Springfield. And we meet every week. It's open, any veteran can participate. We're following a model that was developed by VA Behavioral Health, that the use of music and instrumentation of music and art is therapeutic and healing. And so we have an agreement with the Center for Music Therapy and Wellness here on Drury campus, that we have a certified music therapist who does the instruction with us. We have a VA Vet Center therapist who is a part of the group. So we're very, we cover those boundary issues and concerns. If someone gets into a struggle, we can respond well. But the value of that has been that those who participate say that it's not just about learning how to play a guitar. And if they've never learned to play guitar, we give them a guitar and we teach them how to play. Or if they played all their lives, it's not about that. Say that it's as much about getting out of the house, doing something in a very purposeful way, being with others. It's about the value of music to help kind of interrupt the ideation that sometimes veterans feel. So what we do in that 1 hour is to give them not just an instrument, but motivation and skills that they can take home and use in their, at home whenever they need to kind of get out of their head. So it has ongoing value, but I think it's like anything else. I think they really love just getting together and doing something fun. Otherwise, and that's, I still feel really good about that. Other things we do are like training in services for organizations. We did a couple of big conferences here in Springfield over the last few years with Cox and Mercy and the VA and some others that collaborated to do awareness building on the part of the professional healthcare provider, and to help them then be more aware of and responsive to issues that they may come into contact with veterans. I recently, a couple of weeks ago, in fact, I'll do another one in another week, working with senior care providers at their administrative levels, helping them to understand this issue, because most senior care organizations now have aging veterans in their population, and they need to know how better to care for them. So we're trying to mobilize, empower, and network our community of organizations and community of churches, community of persons, so that we can provide what I think of as a net of care that keeps someone from being alone in their struggle with moral injury, and also to help kind of mobilize our whole community of service organizations around this conversation, so that we take it as seriously as we need to.
Awesome. I have heard really good things about the guitar program. I've heard it from a lot of different sources. So everybody have said it's really incredible. So yes, awesome. So a couple other questions for you. Are there any costs for any of your programs?
No, we are a nonprofit, so everything we do costs. So maybe ought to get that out of the way to start with. But we don't charge for participation. Now, we did for some of the conferences. We had some minimal fees if people wanted CEUs and things like that, to kind of cover that. But we, with help from our community and donations, we don't charge the veterans anything for the instruments we give them if they're in that veteran guitar group. We've never charged for any of our services and don't intend to. I mean, that's just not something that that is a part of our current operational plan.
Awesome. All right. So if I'm a person, not a veteran that wants to get involved into moral injury, just somebody that wants to help your organization, how can I get involved?
Well, we will probably share some of the web information of how to go to our web page or to connect with us on Facebook. The other is just to reach out to me personally, through email or phone, and kind of assess, what the need is, if it's someone looking. And I've had this happen, with veterans who just move into town and they don't know where anything is, and help them find the VA, clinics and resources and anything else that they may need. Sometimes I've found that it's just to have a conversation about their struggle, what's going on in a non-clinical fashion. And I'm very big for, I'm in support of all of our psychological clinical needs. It's just that sometimes we just need somebody to stop and listen to our story. And the biggest thing that I advocate for is, in a very trusted environment context, is to invite that service member to share their trauma story, just to tell it out. And it sounds simplistic, and I don't want to overstate that, but that seems to be the gateway to hope and healing for so many. And that's the one experience that I just keep wanting to have more and more, is to create, context for these conversations to happen.
Well, alrighty. Well, we have all your contact information. I know you posted it into the chat, so we will get that out. That's all the questions that I have. If anybody else thought about anything, feel free to unmute yourself. If not, thank you very much, Tommy.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today. I really appreciate you, the library, and all of you for spending time with me today. Thanks.